Hello, everybody. Hope you are enjoying your wonderful evening. It feels like it's been forever. I don't know.
Has it been forever?
Not forever,
Okay,
but
good.
it was 2 weeks since we got to like hang out and have these wonderful people join us. And so, because last week was the very cool, very awesome nights.
We had the DJ talks last week.
Yes,
A lot of
yes.
great information. Kind of a fun time in the chat room, and I don't know if you had a chance to check it out, Dan. The chill room afterwards, like the after party. Oh my gosh, it was full. I went, I knocked on the door, and seriously, there was like no room. They're like, I'm sorry, room's to capacity. You got to go somewhere else. It was really.
Don't they know?
No,
When the club owner comes knocking, you gotta let him in.
no, it wasn't. It was like none of that going to happen.
No, don't let him know we're above fire code.
Yeah, it's like we're above the 25%. Get him out of here.
Oh my goodness. But no, it feels good to be back. And of course, I appreciate those of you that are watching us while you're also watching the football game. We're back to doing those Monday night things where we compete against Monday Night Football.
Football? What was that? What's that?
Well, I know you come from a state that doesn't really have a team.
Not this year.
Not this year, or ever. But with that being said, there are other states and other areas that have a team.
Yeah,
they're playing tonight.
I suppose
Las Vegas has a team.
We've driven every time we've been driving through the last few years with the Uber or a cab, and they're like, "There it is. That's the stadium over there." They really quite proud of that. So
it looks fancy on the TV for a little bit.
It is. It's very impressive. The part that you keep hearing, or we were hearing from, and for those of you who are down there more, you know more about this than I, sure, by far. But they all talk about the parking, how difficult it's going to be for people to park, and how they have no idea how we're going to get that many people there because there's just no parking ramps and the infrastructure wasn't there. So obviously they're going to be able to do it at some point in time, but right now they don't have to worry about.
They got time to figure it out.
They have more time, yes, to get that all figured out.
Oh my!
So tonight, we're going to dig into the concept of, because Dan, you mentioned in our conversation, because Dan and I actually do talk about the shows once in a while. For those of you who are like, what do they just pull this out of there? We actually do.
Usually we do.
Pretty much, yeah. But this was actually, we talked about it a few days ago. Dan had mentioned the idea that, that a lot of the traditional marketing things with going to bridal shows or doing some of those types of things will not be with us, and what are other options or how we could utilize some ways of getting our name out there. And it's like one area that I think that gets overlooked an awful lot is utilizing yourself as a resource for people who are looking for information for weddings in their area. It used to be that they would go to the local B. Dalton bookstore or whatever it is. I don't even know what bookstores are called. That was the one we had here. There was one that had a Starbucks in it. I don't know what that's called.
Bam.
Anyway,
they'd
go to the bookstore and buy the brides magazines, and they would come. And they would go pour through that and look at different things, and using that for. Obviously, the internet has changed that, but even some of the wedding websites, like Brides or the Knot or some of these. Their numbers aren't as great as they once were because people aren't going to, in essence, experts that way as much as they're looking to Facebook wedding groups or people that they know, or they're going to Pinterest groups that are talking weddings and looking for things that people are sharing. This is what opens the door for us. Why we're going to be talking about becoming that resource for your local market.
And you got to face it because unfortunately, even if you're in a state that's open, for a while there, things were shut down. So there's a number of events that you did not get in front of people. I still remember Drax's, magic number. It was like 42 or something like that of the number of weddings you should try and have in a year. So you're continually getting in front of people, and you don't have that opportunity this year. Whatever happens to be the case, you had a couple months where there was nothing, and so you need to find a way to get your name out there. And being that resource is going to be golden. It's going to have to be the ticket.
So let's dig into that. That's actually an interesting concept of one of their things. People say word of mouth is what drives my business. And Drex said, of course, had the 42 that he gave that speech, I believe, at Arms DJ last year, the year before. But the idea of what Drex is basing this off from is that if you can book 80% of your events, you're going to be in a good spot when it comes to future referrals, because you're going to reach a saturation point where there will be enough people who will be having events in the future to see you and say, oh, this person is great. The reason for that number is that, say, if you do 10 events a year, or you one a month, let's say you're doing 10. And if you have 4 of those events that are destination events where no one is going to be getting married in your market after that, those 4 are basically thrown away. So let's say each one of these events has 100 people, 10 events, there's 1,000 people. We've just thrown 400 people away. Then you start breaking those numbers down of how many people, if you have a year where all your couples were the last ones of their friends to get married, you could have a year or 2 where there's really nobody who saw you that is getting married. Yes, there are parents that have children who will get married at some point in time, but it can quickly, with smaller numbers like that, basically just starve you to death. Hence, if you can book 80% of the available dates, you can handle, if 4 or 5 weddings are dead end weddings, and I don't mean that in a negative way, just in a referral way. But if they don't lead to more referrals, you can survive that. And 80% was kind of people are like, oh, that means I have to book like every, 80% of the Fridays and Saturdays. Let's see, that's about 100. So I have to do 80 events a year. No, not quite. In our market, when we went through and we looked at how many actual wedding dates there are, because you take out holidays, you take out this, you take out that. In Minnesota, we have deer hunting. You take these things out, and we only have like 22 Saturdays that were our prime Saturdays that a person could book. So if I'm doing 15 to 20 weddings, I'm doing really, Saturdays, I'm doing really, really quite well. Fridays are not a big thing, but there's a few Fridays that do book. So when it boiled down, 80% for me was about 25 to 30 shows a year. That's how it works out here. And it might be a little bit different where you are, Dan.
No, pretty much spot on. I mean, we might have a couple more extra weekends just because we don't get as cold as soon, and we warm up a little bit faster, I think, because I think you still have snow like in July. But
yeah, we do.
With that being
4th of July, fireworks, and then shovel.
Yeah, with where I'm at, Friday, Sundays are, unless it's a holiday weekend or in a year where people are postponing to make up for what happened in the spring, it's typically Saturdays, and that's it.
So in just using a number in our situations, if we're doing 20 weddings a year, we're reaching that, hopefully, that saturation point where if 5 of the weddings are the end of the referral chain, we still have a number that could lead to, future business, hopefully. But this year, that number is now 0 or 1 or 2. And it's probably closer to 0 because even some of the events we've done have been very limited on guests. The guest counts have been lower. They're not seeing... We're not going to be known too much in 2020 for creating the most incredible party I've ever been to. That's probably not going to happen. Although people are going to be, desperate, or not desperate, I don't know when to use that word, just excited for any type of fun like that, because it just is not there this year. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be something that, wow, remember that DJ in 2020? He was so awesome. He wore a and played and did and that, that's probably not going to be a thing. So we have to get creative.
Absolutely.
So to become a resource, I think one of the big things is the mindset to go into something like this is that the mindset isn't for me to get my name out there. Yes, that's a secondary thing and it helps tremendously. But I think the mindset when you're going to do this is you really need to have the mindset you're there to help people. You're there to serve people. And in this particular case, with educational content. You kind of follow where I'm with that, Dan?
Absolutely. One of the things you got to realize is people are going to see through any BS that you throw out there. So if your main goal is, I'm going to get my name out there because I want referrals and it's all about me. Your help that you're passing along, your advice that you're giving them, whatever happens to be the case, is quickly going to be seen through as self-serving. So when you go in with that right attitude, first off, you come across you come across as a helpful person. You come across as somebody who they would also want to work with, because, a lot of them, not all of your couples, but a lot of the couples, it is about them. Like it's my day. Like, how dare you do anything else? So they want that right focus on them. And so having that right direction and having those pieces put together with your genuality of help is going to put them more at ease and put you in a better light.
For sure. Definitely in a better light. One area that when we're talking about of that help, I think because we talk to so many DJs through the course of the day and through the course of the week, is that sometimes we start looking at some of the information that we may be able to give to a client to help them do X, Y, or Z. But we look through it through the eyes of what other DJs will think about it more than we actually look through the benefit that it would have to the end user. It's like we don't want to put something out there that other DJs will say, well, that's 101, or that's, that's just stupid. I wouldn't do it that way. That letting that little voice in a crowd over here dictate something that would basically hinder your ability to help, because now you're judging this information for a different audience based on this audience, if you follow me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just think about this. I mean, I unfortunately I've seen some friends of mine post some stuff on Facebook, their personal Facebook page, not asking for advice, throwing something out, some video that may be a clip or whatever that they've done, and people because they're friends with other DJs start making comments on it, and it turns into a very negative light. And they're like, it's almost like, they were sharing it. They knew it wasn't like the best all video clip. They weren't coming across that way. They were just sharing something and just totally alive. So I think in a lot of ways, that's where, and I'm assuming we're going to get this, but you mentioned the Pinterest and the Facebook groups and stuff like that, where people are turning, sharing it in the right venue, sharing it in the right avenue, to where you are being helpful and you're adding it in an area where they're seeking advice, I think reduces the potential opportunity where your friends are going to jump on it because it's your Facebook page and they feel like they can say whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, unfortunately, in this day and age with our personal Facebook pages and the way they can be jumped on, or, opinions and whether it's a political thing or something going on with the current events, it can get ugly quick. And that's really to put something there. And this is something that we talked about. You talk about, don't talk about religion and politics and different things. That still holds true, unfortunately, today on our Facebook pages. I've got a few friends here today that that I know are out there, and they're changing their career to a point, or they're pivoting, and they're going to a different direction. And they've been promoting some of the things that they're doing on their Facebook page, which I don't have a problem with, because there's people that so they're promoting a different business, and then they turn around and then they put up some political post that's basically going to alienate half of the audience. And it's like, you can't do things like that. So even though you may not post any of your tips or sharing of that on your Facebook page, you still got to keep that fairly clean, because you will have people who are going to link back and go and check you out on your Facebook page. So,
or screenshot you or whatever.
Yeah. There's all sorts of negatives there. So just keep your Facebook, as politically neutral and as upbeat and positive and fun or funny as you, but yeah, more of a professional, so much better. Let's kind of talk about some of the kind of things that people, couples, that we've worked with over the years. There's some things that we've seen that, gosh, if they would have known this or known that, some of those areas in which that knowledge that we have could help them. What are some of those areas that you've seen that, geez, a tip or two in this vicinity would be helpful to potential clients?
Wait, say that again?
Tips, basically some of the things that we have seen where if they would have known or had that information in advance in a specific area, such as that their daughters, there's many times where the daughter wants to do something really neat with her dad. And she wants to create kind of this moment, because when they were younger and they had this thing that they did, and she wants to somehow recreate that moment. And if she would have known that doing voiceovers. She could do a voiceover and record it in advance, and that could be played over the song. And the song could be edited so there was her voiceover over the beginning and then getting into the dance. And there's little things like that if brides knew that capability was there at a high level, that would be like, oh my gosh, that's an awesome idea. There's got to be things that you've run across that have been like,
yeah, you just took mine. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would say, one of the things that I've often done at a couple of bridal shows, I've been very fortunate that they've had this idea of allowing the DJ to kind of share, or not the DJ, any vendor that really wants to get up there and share ideas that they've had. And one of them that I've talked about a couple different times has been personalized introductions. This was something, and I apologize to whoever it was that actually shared this idea with me. I feel like it was a Peter Mary thing, but where, it's called introductions, and yet you aren't introducing them. All you're doing is saying your name, and so it's not bringing anybody into the fold. And so one of the things that I love to share with my couples when I get them in front of me, and would love to do this more, is let's think of a way that maybe we can help everybody know who these people are. These people are up there standing on your behalf, and some people are going to know them because they're friends of yours and they're friends of theirs. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, nobody really knows. And so I like to encourage my couples to, let's tell me something about them. Think of a funny quirk that they have. And let's work that into their introduction. So I've got one coming up here. Actually, it's the next one I have. It's in the middle of October, and that's what we're doing for their introductions. We're not doing the guy and girl type of thing, pairing up and walking in, so and so escorting so and so. We're doing one at a time, guy then girl, or girl then guy, the whole way through. But it's like, this guy, they've been friends since kindergarten, and he's never answered his phone. In fact, we're still shocked that he answered the phone when so and so called him to be in his wedding. Mm-hmm. Mr. Joe Bunn. Yeah, just throwing Joe a little bone there. But no. So that's the idea. So, I mean, just having some fun with it, encouraging them to kind of do it. And the one thing I love to do with my moments, I love creating emotions. Okay. That for me, a deadpan wedding, it drives me nuts. So there's two things that I love to get going. I love to get laughter, and I love to get tears, and depending upon what it is. So introductions, give me laughter, give me hoot, give me holler, give me fun with that. Shoe game, same type of idea. Parent dances, emotions all the way through. But I have had, you talked about the voiceovers. I have had some like couples that are just like, we don't really want to do the voiceover. I'm like, fine, then give me something I can talk about. Mm-hmm. But if you want me to talk about it, it's got to be one of two things. I either need an emotion, I need a moment that was just like the favorite memory you have of dad, or I need something kind of funny. And what I often will get is a moment that is stuck in their mind that gets people laughing, and it sets dad a little bit more at ease. He comes into it because he's chuckling about what his daughter remembered. And then they're having that moment together. And then it also, when there's that laughter, it helps that 2.5, 3 minute song not seem as long.
Sure.
When you go into a deadpan song and they're just standing there, it's like, oh my gosh, the song's never going to end.
That can be painful. So you've given us two, talking about customized introductions and creating some emotions with and customizing a little bit that way. So you've got these topics, and every one of you out there has some areas in which that couples, either there are things that you work on or you're featured, or you've seen over the years that these are areas in which people could do more or what have you. Let's take that customized introduction first off. That could become a whole series of little 100-word blog posts. How to make your matron of honor look like a star at your wedding reception could be the title of it. And you could talk about customized introductions, telling her story and setting her up to be, so everyone gets to know who she is, or something to that effect. Or how do you connect your guests in your wedding party could be the title of it. And talking about customized introductions where you're going to tell the story about each one. How to get everybody laughing during the introductions could be another. You've got these titles, and you could be writing these little 100-word essays, basically, You don't want to put everything in that post or that little write-up, but you want to give enough information so people will be like, that's a great idea. Share. That's a great idea. Click share. And you want to have, I don't want to say clickbaity titles, but you want to have a what's in it for me kind of a title on it, so that people will be, read that first sentence or read the title of it and say, huh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. See, if you don't have that, if you've got the same type of thing, or if it doesn't look interesting, I might get them to read the first 6 words, maybe 8 words, as they go. No, that wasn't interesting, so I move on. That's got to be so. The introductions there is a great space. Creating emotions at a wedding. Oh my gosh, that would be like a Pandora's box. There could be 100 articles about that. It's a great starting point is to say, okay, I'm gonna these posts or these topics are all going to be under the creating emotions, and at different spots we can do this, and what tools we can use this. Not that I'm going to give all the ways in one post or at one share on how to create an emotional moment with dad and daughter, but how to make dad look like a rock star, or how to tell dad how you really feel, how to share, bring that moment back when you were a little one, that moment with dad when you were just growing up, whatever. As you start to break these things down into their little parts, and you can tell those stories in that 100-word essay type of thing, 150 words. You wouldn't want to go much beyond that, but you're going to be able to start to paint a picture with these little things, but just a sliver of a picture, but it's just enough where people will be like, huh, this is interesting. And ideally and hopefully they will then click back after it's been shared where they see it. They click back and will maybe go back to your Facebook page where you have all of these tips and all of these different things, and they can go and do some loose reading. That's kind of how you can utilize that information.
Keep in mind, there's 2 things that you've got to really hone in when you're doing these blog posts. First off, you've got to get it out of your head that if I share this, some other DJ in my market is going to see it and steal it and do it. Because if another DJ wanted to steal it, they can. Yep. They don't need your blog post to be able to figure out how to do it. Maybe they'll figure out that you're doing it and suddenly, oh, I've got to do it so I don't get behind, but nobody's going to do it like you. And if you're the one who's sharing the blog post and it gets shared, you're the person who gets known for doing it. Think about the idea that let's assume for a second, this gets shared. It gets shared among 10 people. All right. It gets seen by, then as a result, let's say it's 200 people. Okay. 200 potential people who are now kind of grasping that you do something, versus the people who were at the wedding who saw you do it and then talk about it. There is that word of mouth, and the talking about it is going to be, is going to stand out. But when they see it and they can click it and they can share it, they don't have to have been there to have an understanding of what's going on. And now you're represented as the originator, even if you didn't come up with it yourself. You're determined as the originator versus somebody in your market who maybe decides to quote unquote steal it. The second thing is, if you can have a picture to that, you need to. I like the idea of the blog post a little bit more than the videos. I know we're a video society and we absorb so much in videos and everything like that, but when you look at statistics of where brides are looking a lot of times for their stuff, it's at work. Mm-hmm. So they're probably not watching videos with sound. They might watch videos to hear it or to see it, but not necessarily with sound. So if you can get in with your photographer, hey, by the way, I saw you took a picture while we were doing this. If you're cool with it, can you please share it with me? I'll give you photo credit. I think it would be perfect for this blog post I want to put up. And again, then they're loving it because now your story is getting shared with their picture. Mm-hmm. So again, make sure if you can get a picture that you're taking advantage of that 100%, because it's going to catch eyes so much faster that way too.
For sure. Yeah. I think the idea of having the picture or video, a 15-second clip that just shows just enough that you can refer to and say, hey, watch the video and see this little piece. Audio. It's a great point there that they're watching it at work or looking at it, even at home when they're working from home. And if they've got, say, the spouse is, if they're all by themselves, they don't care if audio pops up and goes. But for many situations, they might prefer to read because, well, maybe I don't have my earbuds in, my computer's hooked up, whatever. Text, I think, is moving back into a more mainstream area where people want to read the articles. A lot of our sporting reporting that we're seeing for a while there, about a year and a half ago, there was it was a title and video, and there was nothing for content. And ESPN and others are finding out that, well, people want to kind of read a little bit more about the story, enough to entice them to go back and watch the video, because the video is where they're going to make their money off the ad. So if they don't have text to entice you to read it or to watch it, people are like, I guess I'll just read about, Tom Brady's, latest kitten somewhere else. Because Tom Brady likes kitties.
And of course, text helps SEO if you're putting it on your website. So that's another thing to throw in there as well.
So let's kind of look Facebook groups. People talk about Facebook not being very popular and it's not being utilized as much. And there's a level of truth to that. But there's some things in some areas that it still does well. And one area is when people are looking, they're researching information. And I think specifically in that wedding area, it's maybe underappreciated or underrated when it comes to how brides are using it to go find information, whether it's to look at vendors' Facebook pages, or more importantly, like every city over the population of 10,000 has a Facebook group, it seems now, or wedding group, Coon Rapids, wedding, whatever it is. It's like you type in the town and wedding into Facebook, and you're probably going to find a Facebook group that's there, or it's in a neighboring town. They're like everywhere. Everywhere. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and I would say that, a lot of the tips that we're having, works well for Instagram too. I mean, keep in mind the 100, if you go to the 150 words blog post or something like that, you're keeping it short, you're keeping it to the point and getting in. And of course the picture is going to grab attention. I've seen some of my photographer friends do excellent with this. Just like I've seen their Instagram, like followers and stuff just blow up because of this idea. And they're just sharing pictures. They're using some of the blog posts, but it's mainly the picture idea. So, if you're sharing legitimate ideas and it's not self-serving, it is because you're doing the good job, and it's going to come back to you. But it's not self-serving in its post. It's gonna be shared, and using the groups, I think, is a great idea. A lot of times you've got to be careful with the groups, though, I feel, depending upon the ones that you get into, because what I've noticed happens in some of the wedding groups, it often gets viewed as, well, can anybody recommend a DJ? That's the post you see, or insert vendor here. And what ends up resulting is 30 to 50 different companies getting promoted that, seriously, when I've looked through the list, I'm like, I don't know half of them.
Yeah, precisely.
And they're supposed to be right in the same town I am. So obviously there are people that are getting work, but they're not standing out enough that obviously they're making an impact. So you've got to be careful not to get yourself drawn into that flea market, for lack of better terms.
Yeah,
I don't want to give it quite horrible connotations there, but just the idea where there's a dime a dozen for everybody, but rather using it to share those ideas, to share that message, so that also when your name gets thrown out, if it gets thrown out into one of those posts, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He did this. Wasn't he the one that posted about this idea that was above? And so suddenly now your name has a little bit more substance to it.
And I think that's a big reason why putting the helping posts out there, as opposed to, hey, check out my new DJ lights type of posts. I think there's going to be two very, very different types of posts. And there's those DJs out there. We've seen them in the Facebook groups, the wedding groups. I think right now I'm in 6 different ones here in central Minnesota. And again, I'm not in a huge population center whatsoever, but these groups are out there. You see DJs who are posting out there and saying, hey, check out my new fogger that'll put fog all the way across the dance floor. It's awesome. Well, good. Those, there's people who will recommend them occasionally, and you'll see their names listed, but most of the time they're not the ones that are getting their name recommended. In many cases, it's people who have who have been there and helped, and people are like, yeah, this person was excellent at our wedding and helped us have a great day and created this moment, and it was just wonderful. Well, sharing the information that helps to put you into that light is really what this is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You need to have those, you just need to have that helpful attitude. And I feel like no offense, John, I feel like a lot of our shows come back to the same theme, just the same theme of being a servant attitude, being a helper, because it's going to pay off in the long run. It really is.
And I think that's really a theme of life. True. The reality. I mean, this is one of those lessons. If we could, teach our children that they pick this one up early, is that's what we're here for, is to help others, serve others, lift others up, because that whole rising, tide, all ship type of thing, and it's true, and that's what gets to be so problematic when you see the kids in school and that they're more apt to put each other down and to be the one to ridicule each other and not be helpful. And it's like, gosh, life isn't, life, that is life, but that's not how successful life will be successful. And you will be successful in this world by doing that. So yeah, we do kind of get back to that a little bit once in a while. So we're creating content that's helpful content, that 150 word, we're getting titles and such with it. So it's what's in it for them? Why should they read it? We're getting our hook into that. Now, where do you start? I think once a person has kind of sat down and figured out some of the topics that you want to hit, and maybe broken things down into a flow chart to say, okay, I can break it this and this, and then break it, and you've gotten. I really think a person, before you start posting and putting this content out there, needs to have a library, whether it's 30, 50, 100 of these little tips and things in the can, because once you start sharing these things and putting them out there and sharing, at the appropriate time, saying, hey, you're wondering about a father-daughter dance? Here's something that was really kind of cool and it might be helpful to you. And that little thing I wrote up about it. Again, and not that it's something that is all, it's not a sales thing. It's that helpful thing. Once you start doing that, you're going to go through this content. And once you're in the midst of the season where you're having people asking questions and things, it's tough sometimes to write the content when you have a deadline. It's easier to put this together and put them in a can. Even if you're going to, when you get to a point and you're like, okay, I remember I had an article talking about how to include grandma when grandma's not here. And you go back and you're like, oh, I need to rewrite this. But you've at least got the original version, which sometimes was getting some of your thoughts together. And now you have new thoughts to add to it. And it becomes a whole new and much better article, or it might become 5 articles really quickly, whatever it is. But getting that back library, getting them in the can per se, I think is so critical when it comes to being that resource. Because if you don't have them in a can, writing them on the fly is going to show and not be good.
Yeah. And while we're talking about writing, I think it's important to make sure your voice is in there. You do have this idea that you're talking to them, so it's not like your 9th grade English teacher's looking over your shoulder, watching you write, but rather you're writing in your voice, you're writing in what you're saying. But do yourself a little bit of a favor and make sure that you're spelling everything correctly and you're using at least somewhat proper grammar with that. I've seen far too many posts, far too many pieces where I just go, don't know if you really want that impression of your business being out there.
Yeah, and that's little things like Grammarly. If you guys haven't checked out Grammarly, it's an app that you can pay some sort of I don't even know how much it is to have that, but it doesn't cost a ton, but it will check your spelling across, and it'll check the grammar in articles and things. It's a great resource to go along. It's just that sometimes when it highlights the word and it's marked it as a spelling error, if you don't click on it and fix it, it stays wrong. It should be smart enough to know that I spelled it wrong and it should just fix it for me.
That's called autocorrect, and we know what happens.
Yeah, then all of a sudden, I can't get a duck an idea of what I just wrote. Is that what they say? Why am I anyway? So getting that library, putting it together, where to share. Obviously, Facebook is an area in which I spend a lot of time with. I think that this is something, Jody, how to implement this idea into Instagram. I'd love to hear Jody Harris take this and how to implement it in Instagram. And having, maybe Stacy Nichols, how would you implement it in a Pinterest area? Because once you have the starting and you've got the base, you can take it to other areas. You could take it to YouTube and make these into little videos and title them and tag them and put the whole text in a video. And when people are searching, good idea for daddy-daughter dance, you might show up if, depending upon how it falls. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. How he's got Lori to do his proofreading.
Day hit on this idea here. This comes from, he said he attributes it to one of your early videos, John, where you're telling him to go visit venues in the off season, ask how you could help them. As a result, he did it the following winter, and 5 venues sent him clients for years, and some still do.
Excellent.
I think that's absolutely an awesome idea. And right now, if there's concern over going into one of these venues for whatever happens to be the case, reaching out to them for the same reason is definitely something that you should consider doing for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. A bridal Zoom meeting. Excellent. Jimmy's talking there. The day that's a great, the visiting of venues. And for those of you who didn't get to see that one, we basically building off is similar to what we're talking about tonight, is going there and introducing and, how can I help? Is there something that you need, this, that, or the other thing? I can I'd like to help you with your events to be more, to help it be more successful, because if you're successful and you do great things and your business is more successful, that helps all of us in the wedding industry. And you go in there with that type of an attitude, and generally venues and different wedding professionals will be like, you know what, that's cool. Let's see what we can do. And that's, that kind of a thing that Day did in the off season when we have some time, because sometimes they have a corporate event. They get a corporate client who comes in and they need a half an hour of music on a Tuesday afternoon because their speeches stop and they're going to be bringing dinner in, and there's a half an hour of downtime, and they want to have something in there so it's just not crickets or music coming over the house system, which isn't very good. There's little opportunities to get on their good side. So,
and if you take their ideas or take their problems and you throw your ideas into it, there's a blog post for you to push out and potentially catch the eye of other venues who have had the same potential issues.
For sure.
Because you're not the only one who's going to be jumping into these wedding groups.
Exactly. Yes.
Venues have the same idea. Now their ideas might be for self-serving, but they're going to pay attention to what's being posted as well.
And I think that's a great direction to take this is not only are we sharing our information, but I think the venue information and venue situations where maybe they had a unique wedding over Valentine's and the bride and groom had these beautiful hearts, and sharing a post from a venue and saying, hey, did you guys see this? The Radisson had this beautiful Valentine's wedding, and oh my gosh, check that head table out. That is absolutely fabulous. I can't believe how awesome it looks. Share. Now you've got people who are like, wow, that's kind of a third person positive, the statement on that. So we're hearing a testimonial from a third person, at source. And then it's also the venue's like, whoa, who is this person who just shared our thing? Because let's face it, you can hover over the share and I can see who shared this post right here, unless it's not a public share. It can happen. So don't be afraid to not only share your stuff, but share other people's stuff, especially if it's applicable, because that's going to come back to you down the road tremendously. Definitely want to help out. Okay. Excellent. So yeah, I think that kind of wraps our thing up here a little bit. Use this time when we're kind of down, we're getting into that, in essence, off season. For some of us, it's happened a lot earlier this year. It happened back in February. But utilize this time and start putting together those, even if it's just a list of topics, and brainstorming those and putting, getting things down on paper. And then you can develop that, start writing things down. Maybe your first one becomes a 5,000 word essay, and then you break it down and you break it down and you keep breaking it down until it becomes these little, don't break things down into like a minute with Randy Bartlett where it becomes 7 minutes. It's got to stay a minute with Randy Bartlett, a real minute with Randy Bartlett. But this is the time to utilize those things and become that resource in your market. So people will, when that time comes and they're looking for someone, be looking your way, hopefully.
Yeah. And face it, unless some things clear up for some of your areas, bridal shows, things like that are not going to be happening. Or, some places are going to maybe be a little bit more gun shy to have bridal shows. So as a result, how do you get in front of them? How do you make that statement? Take the time that you'd be investing, if for lack of better terms, preparing for that bridal show, and get more of these library of your posts ready to go.
Mm-hmm. I like that library. Yeah. I have a library of posts over here. Let me just go back to the library and I'll find some information for you. Yeah, so this is written. Makes it sound pretty high end there. Okay, so
Lord.
Coming up tomorrow night.
Yeah.
We've actually got a couple. There's the trend we're seeing out on many venues and such, or many situations, is people are moving outdoors, whether it's in a pavilion, under a tent, what have you. There's things we can do outdoors with effects and lighting and different things that we can't do indoors. So tomorrow night, I'm going to have Ben Stowe basically give us some ideas on things we can do outdoors that would be really, really cool that we couldn't do indoors. So as we're getting ready and looking at next year and things we want to be kind of creative and have some fun with, he's got some ideas of some tools we can use in maybe a little different way for weddings going there. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the upcoming with the Halloween and what kind of things would be fun to do. Granted, trick-or-treating is going to be different, but still having something cool outside for people as they drive by is always kind of a neat thing. So that'll be tomorrow night's show. Then with Jay and Brian, we're going to talk about we have our contracts, and we have the people who are listed on our contracts, whether it's a bride and groom or mother of the bride or whoever it is. Sometimes there's a difference between who signed the contract and who's in charge of making decisions. And that's something we're going to dig into tomorrow night, is how do you handle those situations where those two things don't jive and we have problems. So your contract and who's in charge. We're going to dig into that with our second show tomorrow night.
Nice. So I got to wonder, though, is one of the things that Ben's going to talk about a heater?
Well, up here, and Ben is pretty, he's pretty hardy. So by October 30th, 31st, it's like, I don't know what, maybe 20.
That's where he finally puts on like pants.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like 25 degrees up in Bemidji. So yeah, if he might have the, the longer, the below the knee shorts instead of the above the knee shorts. We don't get crazy. Heater. It's not January.
Oh, you guys don't even use it in January. What are you talking
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, definitely sounds like some great things are coming up. Wednesday?
Wednesday, MJ's moved his music and mixing to a half-an-hour show on Wednesday nights. So he's doing shorter topics. I don't know if I've seen his topic for this week, but Wednesday night, MJ is back with his live show on Wednesday night.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for everybody for taking the time to tune in tonight. If you didn't take some notes or some gold nuggets out of this, well, just shame on you. But thank you very much for taking your time. We'll be back next Monday night. John and I'll talk about it at some point. Enjoy yourself. Good night.
Good night, everybody.